Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Code of Ethics Zoom meeting. We are so lucky to get Lynn, Kaiser, Conrad, who's our Regulatory Relations Specialist. Try to say that 3 times. It is right now April 26, 2023 that we are making this recording. We have our very amazing and prestigious Hanna and Shahin, the Florida State broker. Thank you, Anne. And then we have my partner in crime, Chad Daniel Hanna, PA, who is just gracious enough to attend this meeting. And why are we having this interview? Many reasons. There are, I like to inform myself about everything real estate related, but when Lynn had given us the presentation at the state meeting, I had no idea that some things that practices, thank goodness that we all do, actually fall under the Code of Ethics, and why we should be careful, not to practice some things that might not be so ethical. So Lynn, where do we find the information? If I were to want to read, remember guys, read the Code of Ethics, it's not that long, where would I find that?
I would go to the National Association of Realtors website, and you can just search by Code of Ethics, and it will be there. There's the code. You'll find the most current edition of the code. You can even find the 86-page arbitration manual. You can find articles about the code and some changes that the code made in 2022 that impacted us starting in January of 2023.
Okay, what year, just for a point of reference, did the Code of Ethics begin?
Code of Ethics was adopted in 1913.
Okay, why? Why was it even written up? Why did it become a thing?
That's a great question. And at the time in 1913, a lot of states did not have laws about how to transfer real property. And so the Code of Ethics was the kind of like the standard for professionalism in the industry. Because again, back then, there were a lot of people selling land sight unseen, and there were, there was a lot of wild activities taking place. And by joining this national organization and having a Code of Ethics, you were identifying yourself as a professional and not one of these people that was selling the same parcel of land over and over again to different people when in fact there was no parcel of land. So it was a way to establish professionalism in the industry, and also a basis for a lot of state laws.
That's awesome. And that brings us to a great question. What is the difference between the Code of Ethics and law? Where does that fit in?
Well, the law is not voluntary, right? The law of the land applies to all, but the Code of Ethics is a voluntary professional standards code for those who choose to join the realtor organization.
I think that's kind of cool. I think that, some people have a certain perception of realtors and who we are and what we do, and they think just anyone can be a realtor, which maybe getting your license is a little simpler, but I think that establishes some sort of base of how we're all supposed to conduct ourselves.
100%. And just because you have a license doesn't mean you're a realtor. There clearly is a difference, and by being a member of the National Association of Realtors and adhering to the Code of Ethics, you absolutely are advancing your professionalism. And I think that, I don't know if all realtors do this or not, but certainly I think they should, when they're conducting business, is make people aware that they are held to a higher standard. Which
actually gives us some street cred, so to speak. So within the industry. Exactly. That's great. Now, also, I noticed that they changed, you used to have to renew your Code of Ethics a certain amount of years, but I noticed now that when you do your 14 hours, it's now automatically included in that. So, we don't have to necessarily worry about that. But as when you were saying that so if the regular person, let's say realtor, learns about the Code of Ethics every 2 years, how often though do they make the changes that I should go to the NAR website and see if anything's changed? Is that annually? Could it be monthly? How do those changes occur?
If there is going to be a change to the Code of Ethics, it would happen annually, and January would be the best time to see what the new code is and has been published on the National Association of Realtors website. And you bring up a good point. Florida has incorporated the Code of Ethics training into the requirement for the CE for your licensure, but other states have not. So other states, those licensees, those sales associates, those members of the National Association still need to get their COE, Code of Ethics training in within every 2 years. And I think they have virtual training right there on the NAR website.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now, today's presentation that we're going to discuss is called the Code of Ethics Fight, Flight, or Freeze. What does that mean exactly?
Well, our brain, when we are encounter stress, when we're in an environment that is, where our instincts kick in, our brain automatically goes into a reactive mode. And it's either we're going to fight to survive, we're going to run away, flight to survive, or we're going to freeze. And that might be survival and it might not. But so we instinctively, because we're animals, we instinctively respond. And so with a stressful environment, which doesn't just have to be, perhaps life-threatening, but where our emotions are going to rise to a certain level, which could be when you receive a letter saying you're under investigation for the Code of Ethics, then your brain immediately responds emotionally. And that's what we're talking about, getting those emotions under control so that your logical brain helps process and then moves forward so that you really mitigate whatever complaint violations have been filed against you and your response is appropriate to the complaint.
Okay, great. And that would cover explore, correct?
Explore. Well, explore was really like, let's take a look at what the code can have. What is in the code? The code has 17 articles and it's divided into 3 sections. Some of the articles deal with the customers and the other articles deal with the public. And then finally, the last section is articles dealing with other realtors. So that's exploring so you know what the code is. Then expanding on that is taking a deeper dive into those 17 articles so that you understand what really the code addresses. And the code, again, it kind of runs parallel to a lot of the laws that we have in place. But, a lot of it seems common sense as well. The code says that we are to protect and promote our clients' interests, that we are to avoid exaggeration in pertinent facts, that we're to cooperate with other realtors. So knowing the code is really the expand section of what we were talking about.
Right. So Article 15 and 16 sound straightforward, but I'm wondering, what exactly do they mean when they say be objective and truthful to other realtors? And then Article 16 is interfering with exclusive representation agreements other realtors have with prospects. And you wouldn't think this would be an issue, but apparently they are. So let's address the first one, being objective and truthful to other realtors.
And it's really, okay, so Article 15, 16, and 17 are how we interact with our colleagues and our peers in the industry, other realtors. So what Article 15 is saying really is that we are not going to malign other realtors. We're not going to make false statements. We're not going to disparage their reputation in, in a forum that others can be aware of, okay? Now, if it is truthful, then great, no problem. But if we're just talking opinions about somebody that are negative, we have to refrain from that behavior. Article 16 is talking about the exclusive representation agreement. And what that means is if you, as a realtor, are working with a seller, typically you have them sign a contract, right, that gives you the right to sell their property. When working with buyers, some realtors have buyers sign a contract that says that buyer has a business relationship to exclusively buy property through a realtor. But some realtors don't have buyers sign that exclusive representation document. And so Article 16 says that we as realtors will not interfere with other realtors who have exclusive representation relationships. So if a realtor or a licensee does not have an exclusive relationship or written relationship with a consumer, then that means that we can pursue that prospect and look into deciding whether or not it's mutually beneficial for both of us to convert that individual into a customer for us and then engage them in an exclusive relationship. So it's really, we don't want to interfere with existing written customer contracts. That makes, if I'm making that clear.
Yeah, so that's a twofold thing. So is that why when we send postcards out blindly, we have to put in there, if you're already working with a realtor, we don't mean to interfere with that relationship? Is that, you know, did you ever see that on postcards when we send out?
Yes, and that's right. And that does address Article 16. But even we can expand on that a little bit further. If you're conducting an open house, for example, Shari, and a customer walks in and they say that they're working with Sally salesperson, and you could say, oh, that's great, you know, share with me whether or not, you know, you have an exclusive relationship with them, or however you want to have that conversation. And they say, oh, we don't have any kind of an exclusive relationship. She's just shown me some houses, and I like her and I'm working with her. And if you wanted to continue to ask questions to decide whether or not they really do have a solid relationship, and this consumer is going to continue working with Sally salesperson, or you're going to try to pursue her, you can. The code does not prohibit you from having that conversation and looking to pursue it, as long as there is not an exclusive agreement.
That brought up something in my mind. Let's say there is no exclusive agreement. Buyer's realtor has been working with them for 3 months. Let's not go too far out. They come to my open house and they say, you know what? We're going to deal directly with you, the listing agent. We don't want to deal with Sally Sue. Chad and Chad had thought of this, which was brilliant, is we usually compensate Sally Sue anyway. You know, we find out who the realtor was, and if they say you can't force an agent with no relationship to work with their realtor. I always suggest, and I say 3 times, you know, are you sure you don't want to work with your realtor? No, we just want to work with you. That is such a sticky thing. What does that happen if we close and Sally Sue does file a complaint saying I worked with these customers for 3 months, and, you know, where does that procuring clause thing come in to this?
Well, so it goes back to the question, did Sally salesperson have an exclusive representation with the buyer? And if the answer is no, that's good for you. If the answer is yes, she did, well then, you know, Sally salesperson and the buyer need to take a look at what those terms are and see what obligations they have to each other, because you weren't a party to that exclusive representation. But again, as part of the code goes, you want to make sure that you didn't interfere with that exclusive. So we'll go on the basis that there was not an exclusive representation. And for going back to your procuring clause, did Sally salesperson show this buyer the property before this buyer ever came to look at it in the open house? And if the answer to that is no, then I'm not sure that Sally has much to stand on, but a committee will decide that, you know, and the parties of the committee may ask other questions and uncover other facts that may reveal that Sally in fact was, but based on the scenario you told me, it doesn't sound like Sally is procuring cause.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, you know, in our previous discussions, you had mentioned abandonment. How does that link in with that when there is an actual discussion, let's put it nicely, between 2 realtors about who actually was procuring cause? What does abandonment actually mean?
Well, did the realtor abandon the relationship? What's the time lapse from when they stopped or ceased communicating with that consumer? You know, is it a week? Is it a day? Is it several months? What happened to the relationship with the consumer? And also, did the consumer say, I'm abandoning the exclusive relationship, I'm severing the exclusive relationship, I'm firing you? I don't know what the terms of an exclusive relationship look like. Every one of them could be different. So that has to, you know, that would be between those two parties. But can a realtor abandon? Sure. And I think it was Ann earlier who mentioned estrangement as well. So does the consumer want to hire, disengage with that real estate agent? And all of that really, and consumers don't know, but all of that should be formalized. If they signed any kind of a document, they, you know, they need to look at the terms and conditions of that document to find out what they are to do to move forward in whatever direction they want to go with, or seek legal counsel for sure.
Yeah, always legal counsel. And that would be in our, you know, in Florida would be the buyer brokerage agreement. And it's, you know, of course, everything can be poked, have holes poked in them and be overturned. But, you know, that helps if you just make it common practice and part of you listing your buyer, like you list your seller, sign that agreement with them and don't abandon them. Don't, you know, let everything get away from you. So let's go to the next part. What does it look like if something does come in the mail? What are the steps that goes through when a complaint is filed? Who is it filed with, and who's notified?
So if you receive a complaint, it's coming to you because the complaint is against you as an individual. And so it is unlikely that your broker is going to be notified that there is a complaint. So that really is on the agent's responsibility to make sure that they inform their broker that, hey, we've got a situation going on. If that agent also wants to reach out to legal counsel, that is up to them. They can reach out to legal counsel and say, hey, you know, I have a situation going on. I think, you know, like we talked about the fight, flight, or freeze, that emotionally there's going to be some processing and reaction time, but then there's also like, okay, I need to think about this logically. I need to look at the facts. What exactly is being claimed here? What's the accusation? What's the violation? And what then support documents do I have to refute this claim? And really looking at the facts is key, and gathering and building, you know, literally you're building a defense to the claim. And oftentimes I see that claims come in and they're very emotional. The person, the claimant who wrote it, is very emotional. And what happens is a lot of times sales associates fall into the emotional response mode, kind of mirroring the person who wrote the complaint. Don't do that. You really want to be logical and address the facts to the complaint.
And so less is more.
Actually.
Yeah, less is more.
And way more.
Yeah. And Ann, let's go through this order. Again, I know you don't like to see a poor agent receive this, but what would be the perfect process for you if, let's say, I have to say, God forbid, I got this. What would you like to see from an agent who receives a complaint?
Well, of course, notify the broker team so that we can help you get ready. If you know, even if you've hired an attorney, it's going to be different, because a lot of times I would attend the hearing with them, but they need to start gathering their evidence even before they start to write their narrative. Start looking at what I have to prove that I didn't cause this violation. So they start to look at that. And customarily, what we normally do is I will set an appointment to interview the agent even prior to them writing their narrative, to go through it, explain to them what they can expect, now to write it, and then we send that narrative off to Lynn often before it's sent to the board. So she could look at it and make sure all that emotion is taken out and that they do stick to the facts. So we kind of walk you through the process as you come to us.
which is awesome. And I believe you both clarified for us previously as well that the legal team for EXP is not necessarily for us. It's when the company itself gets sued or brings up litigation or something. Is that correct? So we have to provide our own attorneys for ourselves. EXP is not going to provide, but you guys will be with us every step of the way. And I'm sure at this point in your 30 plus career, 33 or more, you've done enough of these that you know how to put us in the best possible position, correct?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and as we go through, and I'm interviewing the agent, I do really play devil's advocate, and I'll ask questions just so that they know when they go in front of this panel, they're going to get those questions. And, you know, you should answer them truthfully, but don't add any more than that. That's what you do. You stick to the point. What's being addressed? What article did they say you violated? Stick to why you didn't violate that, and have the proof if you can to support that.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Now, let's talk about Lynn being expedient in this. What do you suggest as timelines? And let's combine that with the expense also.
Sure. Well, I think, you know, the best way to deal with this is to not deal with this, right? And I don't mean the freeze part. I mean to have built up relationships and do the right thing and communicate thoroughly with your consumer and disclose, so you won't have violations brought against you. But should a violation be brought against you, you also want to have a relationship with your other realtor peers so that when you walk into the room, it's not a hostile environment, that these are people who are like, oh yeah, I know you and you're okay. You know, I'm open to hear what you have to say, rather than, oh, your reputation precedes you and I know what you're going to say is going to be confrontational and I may not even be able to believe it. So I think it's real important that in your everyday business practices, that you are constantly building relationships, not just with your customers, not just with your vendors, but with your realtor peers. So I think that's real important. And the other thing is to show up prepared, show up professional. And then the expense is, there's going to be cost involved, right? There's time that you have to spend writing the narrative, time you have to spend pulling all the documents to prove that you are not in violation. There may be costs associated with having the hearing. You may have to pay the Association of Realtors some money. And then should you be found in violation, there may be fines attached to whatever punitive damages that they've assigned to you, in addition to continuing education, or in addition to, what else do they typically do?
Well, what was the maximum and the maximum fine amount? That's what hit hard for me, you know. What was that?
The maximum fine amount that can be sanctioned is $15,000. And that is from the Association of Realtors. Yeah, that's a chunk of change. Now, that's not typically for a first offense. That's typically for something egregious. But we just had one, I shouldn't say we, I just read about one where the Professional Standards Committee assigned a fine of $1,000 to an agent who was found in violation of some articles, and the Board of Directors changed the fine to $2,500. So the Board of Directors also has to approve whatever sanctions are. And I was in a meeting yesterday, and not in the state of Florida, this was another state. Neither of those cases had anything to do with Florida. I was in another state and was made aware of a $5,000 fine for the Code of Ethics. So it's not, sometimes it's $250, but more and more, I'm not seeing those smaller fines. I'm seeing the larger fines because, well, I don't know why. I'll keep I'm just going to guess, you know, that people want to send a message.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And what can we expect with this? So also, if you have a complaint and it goes nowhere, or you actually have to pay a fine, is there a record of yours that it goes on where people can look it up, or the state can find it?
So if a violation is filed against you and it is dismissed, then no, that doesn't go on your record.
Okay.
If you were found in violation, then yes, that does go on your record with the Realtor Association. It's not public information, but it is, because this is a private organization, it is within the Realtor organization. So, but I will say, for example, if you are suspended as a Realtor, not suspended with your license, but suspended as a Realtor from whatever, let's just say Levy County Realtor Association. I don't even know if there is such a thing, but we'll just say the Levy County Realtor Association has suspended you. And so now you want to go to Marion County Association of Realtors and activate your membership there so that you can be a realtor in practice. Until your sanctions are satisfied with Levy County, you will not be activated in Marion County. So that will follow you. You know, the suspension is across the Realtor organization, not just your local Realtor association. And it's really, the most important thing is to set up your expectations that this is, while it is not a court of law and the rules of the courts don't apply here, due process absolutely is part of this process. It is kind of like a grand jury and how it is set up, but really you have your day in court, if you will, so that you can defend against the charges brought to your door. And I really think that's the most important thing, is that realtors know that they need to participate in the process. If they don't participate, they lose, and not that they actually have a lot of control, but they have the opportunity to present a defense. And again, I'm going to say that the realtor has the choice to bring their own legal counsel. They also have the choice to bring their broker of record, the registered broker for the state, and I personally would encourage that. I would encourage that they don't do this on their own, that they have a support system to help navigate through this entire process.
So show up.
If they've never done it.
Show up, not, you know,
show
fight.
up and be prepared, right?
For sure.
So
Don't be cavalier.
go ahead, Ann.
I want to go back to expedient for a second, because there is a timeline that the board gives the agent to respond. It's not open. Usually it's 10 to 15 days from receipt. So they do need to start preparing quite quickly. And sometimes our frustration at, you know, at the brokerage is that the agent, we're running out of time and they don't have their packages ready to send off to the board. So that's something that we do want to mention right away. Start working on what you need to prepare.
So help us help you.
That's right.
Chad, go ahead before conclusion. Go ahead.
As described earlier by Lynn, there are different levels of how the process proceeds. So the committee is consisting of realtors. It's not a paid committee. And then if that committee makes a judgment, it can then go to grievance. It then goes to a trial, and then it goes to the board of directors for a final determination if things escalate to those levels. So the more prepared you are in the beginning to get everything dismissed, the more you may avoid having it escalate to different departments.
Yep, absolutely. Like we said, help us help you. Show up and don't talk too much.
Lynn, do you want to cover that, or do you want me to? Because it will normally go to grievance first. And based on what's written there, based on what they think is written, if it's true, they will then move it to the professional standards hearing. It's not a trial, but it is a hearing that is now in front of the professional standards, which are also selected committee members.
Right.
Okay. All right. Now, finally, obviously, guys, we want you to study the code of ethics. We want you to conduct yourself to the highest standard that you are, you know, that it's expected of all of us just as a human being. And we always say disclose, 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 and be kind and courteous to one another. But finally, if, you know, stuff like this does happen, and the other way to present yourself, Lynn, how should I express myself when dealing with these things, or if a complaint does come up?
There's a couple, that's a great question, and we have not covered that before. And I think there's a couple of things that I would suggest, and well, there's more than a couple. So first, remember that this is not, somebody has filed a complaint against you, so this is, the best defense is not to transfer the blame onto somebody else. Also, the best defense is not to retaliate against the person who has filed the claim. It's your position to defend against the claim, not to twist and manipulate and try to turn this around. If you want to file a counterclaim, that's something else. But in your response, you should be defending the claim. Also, remember, this claim has been filed against you, singular, an individual. So when you are responding, you should respond as a singular person, as an individual. I would say be careful about saying we, us, our, when you're using your pronouns. You want to speak about yourself, I, me, my, mine, and what you did or didn't do. Don't speak on behalf of others, and don't have others speak on behalf of you. I think it's real important that you are clear about your role in the whole process of the complaint.
Thank you. And thank you. You gave us an inordinate amount of time today. You stuttered over that, but you gave us a lot of time today. So we really appreciate it. We don't mean to scare everyone. We want what's best for everyone, but in following along with all of our philosophies, we do like to try to do everything right from the get-go. And listen, some things happen. And I think, Lynn, what your biggest advice is take a deep breath. There are proper channels for this. Take your 2 hours to cry and call your best friend and freak out, nothing in writing. And then let's go. And the biggest thing is, even though Anne represents over 10,000 Florida agents, she always has our back. She's always with the broker team. They're always there for us. And Anne, thank you that we can always depend on you. And we're so lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you. I do have one thing for clarity, because I know a lot of times the violations, it's filed, the ethics violations are filed against the agent. It's usually agent to agent. It's the arbitration that is broker to broker. So if you've heard that, Lynn, if you want to speak about Article 17, I don't think we covered that at all.
Sure, I'll do that quickly. So Article 17 is arbitration and mediation. And I would suggest everybody read Article 17 to be aware of that, because there is a little loophole in Article 17 that most people probably are not aware of. And that is that, let's just say that you showed the buyer, you're the listing agent, and XYZ company brought a buyer and ABC company brought a buyer. And it was ABC, and it brought the same buyer, and ABC company went to closing on your listing with that buyer. Well, XYZ discovers that ABC closed with the buyer, and they say, hey, that's our commission. We were working with that buyer. We have a relationship with that buyer. But what XYZ does is they don't go after ABC, who collected the commission that they think they earned. They go to the listing company and they say, you paid the wrong company. We're coming after you for that money. Should that ever happen, should you get wind of that, you must contact your broker immediately. It is permissible within the code, but there are other steps that the brokerage must take to protect itself, and we need to know about that immediately. Did I cover it, Anne?
I think so. I just wanted to clarify that ethics is agent to agent, arbitration is broker to broker.
Oh,
absolutely.
It's about
right.
the money.
Right.
It's always about the money. 17 is about the money.
So thank you for showing up today, everyone. Thank you for everybody who's watching, and look for more of these wonderful interviews in the future.